Good morning, good afternoon, and some of you even good evening. Welcome to this webinar that we're having today. We're excited to have you in another eFeed Link webinar, and we're just waiting for some of our attendees to come in during this time. We will start our exciting webinar and learn about our exciting topic for today as we receive knowledge from our experts today. So we're just waiting for the attendees to fully be settled in, and we will start our webinar in a very short while. And I'm happy to inform you that in today's webinar, we have more than 100, actually even almost 200 who signed up for this webinar today, attending from many, many countries. We have, together with us, we have people from the Philippines, we have people from Vietnam, we have people from Malaysia, we have from India, different parts of Europe. We have even from people from the USA. Good evening to you guys there. And we also have people from different parts of Africa and many other locations. And again, we'd like to thank you and we welcome you all in this webinar. Once again, thank you for joining another eFeedLink webinar. My name is Alvin. I will be your host for today. And before we get started with our topic, please allow me to talk a little bit about eFeedLink and our services. eFeedLink.com is the most visited feed and livestock industry website. Our species-focused website has dedicated channels covering the latest market news, hot topics, technical information, industry interviews, event highlights, and company updates in the feed and livestock industry. Livestock and Feed Business Magazine is the preferred magazine for key decision makers from the feed and livestock industry to stay abreast of emerging market developments, industry happenings, and technologies. Please do subscribe to Livestock and Feed Business at efeedlink.com. And in case you cannot receive the print copy, the e-magazine version will be emailed to you on a monthly basis. And finally, you can organize and join webinars in our eFeedLink Agri Digital Hub platform, targeted specifically to the livestock and feed industry. Do visit agrihub.efeedlink.com to view and sign up for all our future webinars. Before we get started, if you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to type them into the question box or the Q&A box in your Zoom control panel, and we will be happy to bring them up during our Q&A session at the end of the presentations. In today's era of changing climatic conditions and volatile raw material market, protecting animal feed from mycotoxins is more critical than ever. However, successful mycotoxin management involves many traps which must be recognized and avoided. Mycotoxin control in feed and livestock production relies on solutions with high adsorption capacity to combat a wide range of mycotoxins, selectively binding these toxins without any prohibitive effect on essential nutrients absorption. They should also maintain efficacy across various pH levels and temperatures, ensuring consistent performance. Safety and non-toxicity are crucial, as is compatibility with existing feed formulations. Effective solutions can mitigate contamination risk while protecting health and economic interest. And to share their knowledge in our topic today, we have invited experts, Dr. Iris Kroger and Muhammad Umar. With a degree in veterinary medicine and a master's in animal nutrition, Muhammad Umar has years of experience in the field. His expertise lies in the use of phytogenic feed additives to enhance performance and sustainability. As technical sales manager at Dr. Echo Animal Nutrition, Muhammad Umar is dedicated to providing his customers with the best phytogenic solutions tailored to their specific needs. And without further ado, please help me welcome our first speaker for today, Muhammad Umar.
Thank you very much, Alvin, for a nice introduction. Hello, everyone. I hope everybody can see my screen. That matter. So I would like to formally welcome you all to our webinar today. Our today's topic is mycotoxin alert. What do you need to know? So, on the agenda point, I would be covering shortly about our company, Dr. Ekel Animal Nutrition, who we are and what we stand for. Then, briefly, I will go into the topic what are mycotoxin and what are the detection method or analysis method that are prevalent in the market and how can we use them effectively. Then I will be covering shortly about the recent threats and prevalence of mycotoxins with a particular focus on Asia. Then I will be covering the topic of impact of mycotoxin on livestock health and productivity. Following that, my colleague, Dr. Kroger, will be covering the topics of concepts to fight mycotoxin in the field, benefits of using antifoam MT80, and then we will be coming to our concluding remarks. So to start with, who we are as Dr. Ekel Animal Nutrition. So we develop, produce, and sell innovative feed additives, and with phytogenics being our particular focus. We provide innovative solutions for productive animal nutrition. Under our general management, Dr. Antje Eichel is our CEO. Under company structure, we have more than 70 employees for over 17 countries, which illustrates our commitment to diversity and moving forward. Dr. Ekel Animal Nutrition was founded in 1994, and we have our own production plant since 2009 in Germany. So from our working location, our headquarters is located in Niedersachsen, Germany, like I just mentioned, and we also have an international office based in Thailand. Under our top trends or what keep us focused, we have animal welfare, sustainability, and innovation. Moving on, like I just mentioned, we have global locations too. In general, our headquarters is based in Niedersachsen, Germany, and our production plant is also based at along with our headquarters. Then we have our international headquarters that is based in Bangkok, Thailand. And here on the world map, you can see in dark green color all the countries where we are currently active. In other words, we have product registrations and we are doing actively business there. And the light green color here mentions the country where we are still in progress with our product registration, and we are hopeful to get started with our business there soon. Moving on, what are mycotoxins? So as many of you will already know, that mycotoxins are toxic metabolites that are produced by certain fungi. The contamination may include raw materials like grain, feedstuffs, in-field contamination, or we have post-harvest mycotoxins like aflatoxin or ochratoxins that can contaminate your grains and your feedstuff or raw materials during the storage period due to temperature fluctuation and etc. Under classification, more than 400 mycotoxins are known, or let me just say the mycotoxin and toxin metabolites are known. Sorry. And they are well known for causing acute and chronic diseases. Under risk factors, first of all, the most major risk factor is the season and storage conditions. So generally, it is believed that a humidity of more than 70% and a temperature of more than 30 degrees is the most convenient or conducive environment for the mycotoxin growth, post-harvest as well as pre-harvest. Then under pre-harvest conditions, when during crop growing production phase, we have it could be affected by insect infestation, drought, or flooding conditions. Then we have feeding byproducts like hay stubbles, wheat stubbles, and the literature shows that they can be 3 times more contaminated with mycotoxin as compared to just grains. Then, of course, in some livestock species like ruminants, we are using straw bedding for calf rearing, and even that straw bedding can be contaminated with mycotoxins. Moving on, there are many ways of classifying mycotoxins. It could be based on their production phase, whether they are pre-harvest, post-harvest. It could be based on the species responsible for their production. One of the convenient way of, let's say, classifying mycotoxin is based on polarity. For example, you have polar mycotoxins like aflatoxins or fumonisin. The term polarity implies that they have a charge for that matter. Then you have non-polar mycotoxins like deoxynivalenol, zearalenone, ochratoxins, T2, and Hg2. So for polar mycotoxins like aflatoxins and fumonisin, what you will hear normally in the market, sorry, that you need inorganic mycotoxin binders like clay minerals or aminosilicates that they have a high binding capacity for these mycotoxins due to polarity and different molecular weight and size. Then for non-polar mycotoxins like zearalenone, ochratoxins, you have organic binders like yeast cell wall extracts for that matter. So based on the polarity, the binding efficacy between polar mycotoxins and non-polar mycotoxin is different for inorganic binders and organic binders. So as I mentioned before, what are the methods that we use regularly to detect mycotoxins? So in the field, you will hear five main methods, starting with HPLC, that stands for high performance liquid chromatography. Then you have LCMS-MS, that stands for liquid chromatography with tandem mass spectroscopy. Then we have, of course, ELISA. Then we have LFT with reader. LFT stands for lateral flow devices, or in market value terms, we normally call it with sorry rapid test. Then we have LFT without reader device. So these are just the quick rapid tests that you don't need any device to read the results. You can just conduct the test and read the results with naked eye or directly. Now the question comes, which test is better or has a more accuracy? So the first point you will see here is the detection limits. So with HPLC and LCMS-MS, or you have the best, let's say, detection limits and high accuracy. But of course, then you also have to see on the suitability of the methodology to your particular needs. For example, for HPLC or LCMS-MS, you need at least 3 to 4 hours of sample preparation. And of course, you need professional required. And if you look at the last row of cost per test, you will realize that they are comparatively very expensive tests as compared to ELISA or LFT with reader. So that brings me to my point that for agriculture and feed manufacture, where the main goal is, of course, pre-screening or field testing, then the LFT devices with or without reader are a better choice. Because as you can see, with LFT with or without reader devices, of course, the accuracy is low, but the sample preparation time is very less, between 10 to 15 minutes. And then, of course, you don't need technical or qualified personnel to conduct the test. Even a layman in the field can conduct this test. And of course, in terms of cost, they are comparatively very cheap as compared to HPLC for that matter. And similarly, if you are a service lab or authority that would like to have a more complete picture of the mycotoxin contamination, then of course you have to go with the confirmatory tests like HPLC and LCMS, which offer a higher accuracy as compared to the field testing. But of course, when we talk about mycotoxin analysis or detection, the most important point that we should not forget is the sampling. The most common problem that we have in the field is that if you have, let's suppose, a jar of grain, and if you only take sample from the top of that jar and you conduct the analysis, let's say it's negative for mycotoxins, but it does not imply that you don't have mycotoxin in the whole jar, because mycotoxin distribution is non-uniform, and of course it could be more than one mycotoxin present in that jar of grain. So, as per literature and professional recommendation, it is highly recommended that you take a composite sample. The composite sample implies that the sample that you collect for making a mycotoxin analysis or detection should be representative of the whole sample. So, for example, if you have a jar of grain, again, It is better to take one sample from above, one from middle, one from the sides, one from below of the jar, and then you combine them together or mix them together, and then you take a representative sample out of it to make the mycotoxin analysis. Further on, now I would like to know your opinion about the threat of mycotoxin in the last 2 to 3 years. Shortly, you will see a poll on your screen, and it would be great if you could share your insights with us. So thank you very much for your feedback for the poll, and I will be sharing the results with you shortly. So thank you everyone for the participation. I can already see the webinar poll results. So the question was, how do you assess the threat posed by mycotoxin in the last 2 to 3 years? So the 77% of the participants have choose the first option, that the threat is increasing. Then we have 4% participants elaborating that it is decreasing, and 19% that it is same as before. So moving on, please allow me to share some insights into the recent threats of mycotoxins. So here you can see the publication from the European Food and Safety Authority, that is from 2020, which indicated that the climate change as a driver of emerging risks for food and feed safety, especially for animal health and nutrition quality. The point or the risk factors that I mentioned before, like drought, flooding, high temperatures, and humidity. So the climate change is the biggest factor there. For example, we have now weather extremes, even more prominent in Asia, and that also translates into higher mycotoxin levels and load. Plus, if we look at from the commercial perspective or the marketing perspective, we have, due to these climatic conditions, we are suffering from feed shortages. or even increased feed contamination. And as a result, we have instability in the feed market as well. Moving on, if you just look at the world population graph from 1990 to 2024, so this figure of 8.12 billion people in the planet is from July 2024. So if you compare it from 1990, it was 5.32 billion. So that's an increase of 65, almost 65% there. On the other hand, we see food competition, that is, feeding of raw materials with poor quality is more prevalent than ever. And then contaminated feed may be disposed into poor region because of non-availability of other feedstuffs. And most importantly, in the past 2 decades or 3 decades for that matter, we are also seeing increased land competition or land use competition between producing grains and feedstuff for animals as compared to producing feedstuff for vegan diets for that matter. So all in all of this translates into conducive conditions where mycotoxins are even a more threat than ever. That here I would like to bring to your attention the recent threats of mycotoxin, the global report from 2023. And here you can see the prevalence of mycotoxin among different regions. As you can see, for South Asia and China, Taiwan, it's the 75 to 100% of the samples were above the risk threshold. And if I put it into conclusion, then 98% of the feed sample had more than 10 mycotoxins or metabolites, and on average 47 mycotoxin and metabolites per sample were positive. Let's take a deep dive into that. And here I have prepared the regional prevalence of mycotoxins. As you can see, for Central Asia, the only mycotoxin that was prevalent in 2023 was ochratoxin with 50% prevalence. Then in China and Taiwan, we see the fumicin was the highly prevalent mycotoxin, followed by zearalenone. In South Asia, aflatoxin topped the list, followed by fumonisin, ochratoxin, and T2. For Southeast Asia, we see that most threat was from fumonisin, followed by aflatoxin, and then zearalenone. And then East Asia, we see the fumonisin top the list again. And if I look at the total risk percentage, considering the minimum threshold values, South Asia had 88% total risk, China and Taiwan followed by 85%. And then, of course, we have Southeast Asia at 58 and East Asia at 43%. Here, I would like to show you the prevalence of different mycotoxins in the Asia for 2022 or 2023 versus 2023. Here on the right side, you can see the graph of prevalence between the 2 years. So in 2023, aflatoxin had a prevalence of 48% as compared to below 40 from 22. In terms of zearalenone, we saw a slight decrease. Let's say it was higher in 22 as compared to 23. Then in terms of T2, we saw an increasing trend, and we also saw a similar trend for fumonisin and ochratoxins. Then it brings me to the most important point of mycotoxin interaction and synergism. So typically, the feed sample or the grain sample that you will analyze in the at your businesses or in the field, it contains more than one mycotoxin or metabolite for that matter. And of course, the toxic responses and clinical signs are complex and diverse. So when we are looking at a mycotoxin analysis or a mycotoxin analysis for a feed or raw material, we have to consider the possible synergies, or let's say the combined effect of mycotoxins. Sorry. So here, if you can see, look at the circle, the red line between different mycotoxin indicates the synergistic effects. for example, between aflatoxin and T2. So if you have a feed or if you have an animal that is being fed a feed which contains both aflatoxin and T2, the combined effect would be much worse as compared to these mycotoxins being fed individually. And similarly, we have additive effect. And in the circle, the dotted line between mycotoxin indicates the additive effect. Please allow me to put it into perspective. So here, for example, for multi-mycotoxicosis, we have a study from 1988 which shows the effect of different mycotoxins alone and in combination. For example, we had a 3-week-old broilers, and the control had, let's say, body weight of 600 grams almost. And with then they made 3 treatment groups. In one group, they fed only ochratoxin at 2 milligram per gram diet, and here we saw 12% decrease in weight gain or body weight. Then in the another group, they fed aflatoxin at 2.5 milligram per gram diet, and here they saw 12% reduction in weight gain as well. But when they combined the both mycotoxins and fed to the animal or birds for that matter, they saw up to 40% reduction in the body weight gain or body weight. So this example clearly indicates the problem of multi-mycotoxicosis and why we need to consider all the mycotoxins simultaneously for analysis and for negative effects in the animal. Following on this example, here you can see the difference between a natural contaminated corn and non-contaminated corn and its effect on the protein content, metabolizable energy, and fat percentage. For example, in non-contaminated corn, we had a protein content of 9.34, but in the contaminated corn, it was decreased by 12% and was only 7.32 as compared to fat, which was 4% in non-contaminated corn, but due to contamination, we had a loss of almost 63%, and it's only left at 1.5%. Then in terms of metabolizable energy, we saw a loss of 6.7%. If I were to put it in terms of production parameters like FCR and weight gain, so on the lower left side, you can see as compared to the non-contaminated corn or negative control for that matter, in contaminated corn, we saw 17 points more or increase in FCR as compared to the other. Similarly, in terms of weight gain, with contaminated corn, we saw 54-gram reduction in weight gain as compared to the non-contaminated corn. So to expand on this topic, I would like to share the effects of combinations of different mycotoxins on different bodily or physiological organs, and what threat do they possess or do they pose in terms of lower production and health parameters. First of all, if you see the combination of aflatoxin, T2, deoxynivalenol, and fumazine can affect mucosa and digestive tract. And as a result, what clinical signs or what common signs you will see at the farm level would include low feed intake, lower weight gain, diarrhea, and vomiting. Vomiting is a more peculiar sign for deoxynivalenol that we normally associate with, but due to multi-mycotoxicosis, these symptoms can be merged as well. Similarly, if you have combination of fumazine and ochratoxin, you will see its effect on kidney, and it will translate into diarrhea, fatty liver syndrome, like in dairy cattle, and then you can also have porcine nephropathy in swine. Then, for example, the most common mycotoxin problem in terms of reproductive issues that we see is associated with zearalenone and T2. Zearalenone is a mycotoxin that is peculiar for the hormonal imbalance and reproductive efficiency. Its main organ will be reproductive tract, and in all the animal species, what you will see in general would be poor breeding or laying results, poor sperm quality, embryonic death, reduced fertility, or cystic ovaries in ruminants for that matter, or irregular heat cycle. And then last but not the least, one of the most important aspects associated with mycotoxins is the carryover effect. For example, with aflatoxin, ochratoxin, deoxynivalenol, the affected organs, it could affect your metabolism of the animal, but it also has a carryover effect. Carryover effect implies that the milk and meat could be contaminated, and the negative effects of mycotoxin metabolites could be transferred to humans as well, which makes it a public health problem as well, and ask for a strong measures to be taken for its curbance. That's all from my side. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Muhammad, for that very insightful presentation. Our next speaker is Dr. Iris Kruger, is a recognized expert in veterinary medicine and animal nutrition. With a PhD focus on feed additives and toxin binders in dairy cows, she combines scientific rigor with practical experience. In her 5 years at Dr. Eckel Animal Nutrition, Iris has excelled in the technical sales team, managing a wide range of products and specializing in solutions that promote animal health and sustainability and as well as profitability. Without further ado, please help me welcome our next speaker, Dr. Iris Kruger.
Yeah, so welcome everybody from my side also. Thank you, Alvin, for this nice introduction, and also Muhammad for your part about the recent threats of mycotoxins. If we think now about concepts to fight mycotoxins in the feed, I think it's very important to keep in mind where these mycotoxins occur or where their origin is. So at which production level we are actually. If we look at the agricultural sector with biological factors, environmental factors, or even harvesting conditions that affect the level of mycotoxins in the raw materials, we as a feed industry cannot do much in this level. And there it's up to genetic modification or the biological or chemical control in the fields. Where we as a feed industry come in is actually the level of storage, where up to a certain extent we could influence temperature and moisture or detect the mycotoxins in the beginning of storage, for example. On the other hand, we also have the possibility to use products, for example, acid-based products to prevent the growth of mycotoxins and molds during the storage. And here I will highlight a bit in one example of such acid-based products that is produced by Dr. Eckel Animal Nutrition, just to give you an idea which points we have to consider if using such products and which ability they have. Coming to the level of feeding the animals, here usually mycotoxin binders are used, like Antaferm MT80, and this is especially important because they reduce the amount of mycotoxins that is absorbed by the gut of the animals, and furthermore we also inhibit the transfer to the nutritional sector, so to the end products like meat, eggs, and milk that Muhammad mentioned before. If we look now at these products or acid-based products that we use during the storage of grains, here we should use combinations of synergistic ingredients. And in our product Molsid Pro, we use different acids. And the reason why we do this is that propionic acid, for example, achieves an immediate protection of the grains because the pH in the grains is reduced immediately, and we kill the molds that are present in the feed in the beginning of storage. Benzoic and formic acid, however, they guarantee that the protection is active until the end of the storage. And of course, this is very important because by the time of storage, the mold risk will increase. Furthermore, this combination also guarantees that we have not just an inhibition of molds, but also of bacteria and yeasts. Those acid-based products are effective in the feed preservation and also in the TMR preservation. And for the end user, it's especially important that these products are easy to handle and non-corrosive, of course. To give you an idea how this use of products could look like, I want to present to you this trial that we performed during the rainy season in Vietnam. And here we had two groups. The first group was a control feed without any acid-based product or other products to protect the feed from mold. And the second group was feed samples with the addition of 400 gram per ton Molsid Pro. The sampling was done over 8 weeks with every 2 weeks, and we actually determined the total mold count in the feed samples. So what you see here as a result is that during the period of 8 weeks in the treated group, there was no increase of the total mold count. In contrast, in the control group, where we did not have an addition of acid-based product, we see a huge increase in the total mold count. And this highlights again why it makes sense to protect the feed with such acid-based products. So now coming to the next possibility, what we can do against mycotoxins and how these mycotoxin binders like Antaferm MT80 work, and also which points are important to consider to have an effective protection of the animals in the end. First of all, we need products that absorb a wide range of mycotoxins. And the reason behind this is that we have varying mycotoxin levels from season to season. And if we have one mycotoxin already in the feed, we know that more than this one mycotoxin is present. And we want to cover all the mycotoxins that are in the feed or could be in the feed, because it may not be possible always to detect everything what we have. The second important point is that we have no effect on valuable nutrients. With charcoal, for example, we see that there is a negative effect on amino acids and vitamins, for example. And of course, this will counteract our diet formulation and is not acceptable. We need a rapid and uniform dispersion of the product in the feed. And of course, the mycotoxin binders should be heat, pelleting, extrusion, and storing stable. And last but not least, we also need a high stability over a wide pH range. And the background for this is that in the gut of the animals, we usually have different pH conditions. So the pH changes between lower and higher pH levels. And if the mycotoxin binder has not a high stability over this pH range, then the risk is that the mycotoxins are released. in one or another part of the gut of the animals. And afterwards, we don't have an effective protection and also cannot guarantee that the mycotoxins are not transferred to the end products. Muhammad mentioned before that we have this group of polar mycotoxins and apolar mycotoxins. And here, of course, we need inorganic binders to bind polar mycotoxins and organic binders to non-polar mycotoxins. And this is exactly what we take into account took into account when designing Antherm MT80. In Antherm MT80, we have a combination of clay minerals that will bind polar mycotoxins and organic components like yeast cell walls that will bind apolar mycotoxins. We have another advantage of yeast cell walls because the immune function of the animals is supported. Since the development of Antherm MT80, we also recognize that this product is much more effective if activated with citric acid, because this citric acid activation guarantees that the mycotoxins are bound effectively on the binding materials. Additionally, we have a good taste or better taste by citric acid, which will promote higher feed intake of the animals. As you know, there are many products on the markets which are mycotoxin binders, and this graph only shows a comparison of different mycotoxin binders on the market and their adsorption capacity of different mycotoxins. So here in the lower row, you see the aflatoxin adsorption capacity. Then we have here ochratoxin absorption capacity, zearalenone absorption capacity, and also T2 and fumonisin that are absorbed. But we also see that there are differences between all the products. So for example, more simple binders are usually only effective or mainly effective against aflatoxins, and as we learned before, this is not really sufficient to protect the animals well against the whole range of mycotoxins. Furthermore, we see that with the high binding capacity against all major mycotoxin classes with Antherm MT80, we take a good choice. Now coming a bit more to the practical effects or the in vivo effects of such mycotoxin binders. And here I want to present to you one trial that we did in a Russian broiler farm. There, the diet of the broilers was naturally contaminated with all major mycotoxin classes. We had a fattening period of 37 days, and we had, as a feeding group, first the negative control. The negative control was fed with this naturally contaminated feed, but without any mycotoxin binder. And we had 3 treatments group. The first treatment group was fed with a yeast-based mycotoxin binder. The second group was a clay mineral-based mycotoxin binder. And the third treatment group was the more sophisticated concept of Antherm MT80. And if we take a look now at the growth performance and FCRs of the broilers, we see something very interesting. So first of all, we see that all groups that were fed a mycotoxin binder had a higher weight gain and a better FCR than the negative control group. So this shows that it absolutely makes sense to use mycotoxin binders in contaminated feed. On the other hand, there are also differences between the treatment groups, and we see that the group fed Antaferm MT80 had the highest total weight gain and the lowest FCR. And this is especially interesting because the clay mineral-based group was fed with a double dosage as compared to the Antaferm group. Coming to the some experience in the pig sector here, also we performed a trial where we compared the growth performance and mortality of pigs fed with Antaferm MT80 or one competitive product. This was a yeast-based product. And we see that again, Antaferm MT80 had a higher weight gain and lower mortality as compared to the competitor group. So this also shows that if we use a more effective mycotoxin binder, we actually see the difference in the in vivo data. So now coming to the important point of contamination of the food by mycotoxins. And I think the most renowned example of this contamination is aflatoxin contamination in the milk if dairy cows are fed with mycotoxin contaminated feed. In this more practical example, we had a 2,500 dairy cattle farm, and the background was very interesting because the farmer suffered from 40 to 60 ppt aflatoxin M1 in the milk, and he tried already 2 products to counteract this contamination. The first product he tried was a biological product that was based on a blend of bacteria and organic acids, and the second product, a chemical product that was based on a blend of silicates and antifungal agents. But unfortunately, both products did not show any effect, or the reduction of aflatoxins was not sufficient that he could sell his milk anymore. So in the end, he tried Antaferm MT80, and indeed the aflatoxin level in the milk was reduced by 80%, and the farmer was really happy because he was able to sell his milk again. And this shows again why it makes totally sense to use mycotoxin binders if farms face problems with mycotoxins. Yeah, we already talked about the effect of mycotoxins on feed efficiency. And I think it is also clear that in these times of challenging economical conditions, but also a shortage of feed materials in the market, reduced feed efficiency is not acceptable. On the other hand, we know, of course, that mycotoxins are not the only reason why feed efficiency could be reduced in the farms. And here in this graph, I like it very much, this overview, which highlights that mycotoxins have a huge impact on the feed efficiency in the farms. But what we should not forget is that we have other toxins that could be the reason for reduced feed efficiency. And here I want to highlight the group of endotoxins. These endotoxins are not present in the feed, so we will not be able to analyze them. And they are more the consequence of intensive feeding, and they occur in the gut of the animals only. And this is only to keep in mind, because if we face problems with reduced feed efficiency or also symptoms that look like the effect of mycotoxins in the farm, we should keep in mind that there are other reasons for such symptoms. If, for example, we are not successful with the mycotoxin binder we use, or if we know from the mycotoxin analysis in our field that mycotoxins are actually not the big problem. But what endotoxins are exactly and what we can do against them, this will be maybe the topic of a next webinar. So now coming to the take-home messages of this webinar, we learned that mycotoxins differ in structure and symptoms. We know that only complex solutions provide effective protection. In general, we say that simple products are usually less effective. And if we use mycotoxin binders or other products against mycotoxins, we recommend to use them as a preventive measure because this only will ensure that there's no accumulation of mycotoxins in the animal. Then we want to avoid the synergistic effects of the mycotoxins, and we want to protect the animals from varying mycotoxin levels. If we are not successful with our mycotoxin binder, or if we know that we have no mycotoxin contamination in the feed, we should consider other toxins like endotoxins, for example, to be the cause of our reduced feed efficiency or other toxic related symptoms. With this, I come to the end of my presentation, and I thank you very much for your attention, and also against my colleague for his nice part of the webinar. And I'm looking forward to answer the questions that came in during the webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Iris, for that wonderful presentation. Now we will take this time for our Q&A session to answer the questions, immense interest of this topic from our attendees. So let's go to the first question, which I believe is for Muhammad. And the question it goes like this. What is the best methodology for detecting mycotoxins in the feed?
Thank you, Alvin, for sharing the question. I personally believe it's a question more of at what part of food or feed supply chain you are situated. For example, for feed manufacturers or for in-feed analysis, let's say for grain traders for that matter, it's very much important to get a quick picture right at the moment, right? So for that matter, the LFD or lateral flow devices with or without reader are, of course, offer a better opportunity because of its portability and low cost. But at the same time, these methodologies have lower sensitivity because I would like to relate a common example that many of our viewers will know from the daily life that during Corona pandemic, we used to do the antigen antibody test with the test strips, right? It would be either positive or negative, but it could be false positive or false negative as well due to low sensitivity. So the laboratory confirmation was done with ELISA, or let's say PCR for that matter, that would give you an exact value. So the same principle applies here as well. So when you are doing the field testing, let's say with the rapid test, it gives you a good idea how much is the contamination level, and in some cases, rapid test could be semi-quantitative as well. But if you want to get the complete picture, for that matter, you would have to go to the laboratory method that includes liquid chromatography with tender mass spectroscopy, or if you want to go with very high detection limits, you would have to go with the HPLC for that matter. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Muhammad, for answering the question. Our next question, I think this is more for Iris. The question is this. What is the ideal or right time to use a mycotoxin binder?
Well, I think the right time is depends actually. because I think the first point where we should think about using if it's I may maybe go general. So in the storage, for example, if we look at the beginning of the storage, for example, there it makes more sense to use acid-based products to prevent the mycotoxins already from growth. When we, however, have already contaminated feed, so if we know that the feed is already contaminated with mycotoxins, then we should consider to use a mycotoxin binder. And this is not so important when we use it. It's just the fact that there we have already a contamination and we want to protect the animals from this level of mycotoxins that is already present. But if we have clean feed, we should more work in the direction of prevention of the growth of molds. So more with the preservation products like acid-based products.
All right, thank you, Dr. Rice. Maybe I could just make a follow-up question to Iris. How then can a customer decide whether to use a mold inhibitor or a mycotoxin binder?
Yes, exactly. So this is more or less what I said. So if we have a clean feed that we want to store in our plant, then we should work with a mold inhibitor to prevent the mold from growth during the storage. And if we have contaminated feed already, then we should work with a mycotoxin binder to protect the animals from the mycotoxins present in the feed.
All right, thank you, Dr. Iris. Now let's take one question, another question from the attendees who would like to know. I think this is more for Muhammad. Question is this: between climate change and poor feed storage practices, which of this is a bigger factor in driving mycotoxin increase in feed?
Thank you for the question, Alvin. I believe these two topics, or let's say points, rather than considering them in absolute terms, that which one is better or worse, we should take them as concurrent, or let's say one is the catalyst for the other. So, for example, with getting, let's say, climate change, bad weather conditions, it is catalyzing the process for the spoilage of the feed, for that matter. And of course, even with the, let's say, optimum handling of the grain. So first of all, we would have to start with the start of the feed supply chain, that is the crop growth. And there now we are seeing new technologies, even genetic resistant grain species, which are more resistant to the climatic change, heat and drought stress, and they are more resistant to toxic fungi as well. So then you have the harvesting and storage, and what can be done in a better way there. Then of course the storage, and I personally believe that with changing climatic conditions, it has made more difficult to make our grain or raw material storage to be safe, let's say, from the toxic effects of the fungi. But on the other hand, if we take the proper, let's say, steps to store the grains, then I would say that with better technologies available at our hands now, it's doable, even with the changing environmental conditions. And one of the another point that I would like to add, awareness, I believe, is the first step. So if our customer or the different partner of the supply chains, partner of the supply chain are aware of the risk, then I believe that combining these two topics of climate change and let's say better storage conditions, we could have a good way forward. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mohammed. Actually, we have a number questions in our Q&A. However, it looks like that is all the time that we have for today's webinar. I know there's a lot of interest from our attendees today, but don't worry for the questions that we have not answered. We will actually be forwarding them to our presenters and their response will be emailed to you accordingly. So fret not. We will answer the questions through email to be more personalized, more direct answers to the questions. And it's so sad that we have little time to do a question and answer, make it very long, but don't worry, we will answer them. And of course, once again, we would like to thank Iris Kruger and Muhammad Umar for sharing their knowledge in today's webinar topic. Very exciting, a lot of learnings, a lot of interest. Thank you so much for both of you for sharing your knowledge. And of course, Dr. Ekel Animal Nutrition for bringing us this wonderful webinar. And last but not the least, to our attendees, we appreciate you being here and we welcome any feedback that you have for this webinar. And please do visit eFeedlink's Agro Digital Hub to attend our future webinars. And thank you once again, and we would love to see you all in our future webinars. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.